The grease under my fingernails told the story of an honest day's work, but the lipstick on my wife's collar told a different story entirely. I'm Jake Malloy, 40 years old, owner of Malloy's Motors, and apparently the last person in this godforsaken Rust Belt town to figure out that my wife Riley was screwing around. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. It started with a key. Not the kind that opens doors to new opportunities, but the kind that locks away secrets. I found it Tuesday morning, wedged between the couch cushions, like a guilty conscience trying to hide. Small, brass, with numbers etched on the side that didn't match anything we owned. "Riley," I called out, holding up the mystery key. "What's this for?" She froze mid-sip of her coffee, and I swear I could see the gears turning behind those green eyes that used to make me forget my own name. Now they just made me suspicious. "Oh, that's probably from my gym locker," she said, way too quickly. "You know how I'm always losing things." Riley hadn't been to a gym since the Clinton administration, but I let it slide. That was my first mistake. My second mistake was trusting Mike Hendricks, my best friend since high school and the most reliable mechanic this side of Detroit. Mike had been acting strange lately, avoiding eye contact, making excuses to leave early. When you've known someone for 25 years, you notice when they start acting like a stranger. The garage was my sanctuary, a place where problems had solutions and everything made sense. Broken transmission, replace it. Worn brake pads, swap them out. Cheating wife and backstabbing best friend. Well, that's where things got complicated. "Jake, we need to talk," Riley announced that evening, perching on the edge of our kitchen table like she was posing for a magazine shoot. Even after 15 years of marriage, she still knew how to work her angles. "About what?" I asked, though something in my gut already knew. "About us. About our marriage. About how we've grown apart." I set down my beer and really looked at her. The woman I'd married had been genuine, warm, real. This version wore too much makeup and spoke in rehearsed sentences like she'd been practicing in front of a mirror. "What are you saying, Riley?" "I'm saying maybe we should consider an open marriage. You know, see other people while we figure things out." The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. "An open marriage? Jesus, Riley, where's this coming from?" "It's not that crazy, Jake. Lots of couples do it. It might actually strengthen our relationship." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Right. And I suppose you've already got someone in mind?" Her silence was answer enough. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling while Riley slept peacefully beside me, probably dreaming about whoever she wanted to add to our suddenly open marriage. The key sat on my nightstand, mocking me with its mystery. The next morning brought answers I didn't want. Riley had left her phone charging in the kitchen, and when it buzzed with a text message, I glanced over out of habit. "Can't wait to see you tonight, baby. Jake's working late again, right? T." My hands shook as I scrolled through the messages, months of them, explicit photos, plans to meet, and worst of all, conversations about me. "He's so clueless," Riley had written. "Still thinks you're just a client." "Poor bastard," came the reply from T. "Maybe we should put him out of his misery. Soon, baby. Very soon." I set the phone down carefully, my mind racing. T. Who the hell was T? And what did they mean by put him out of his misery? The answer came that afternoon when Trent Morrison walked into my garage. Trent was everything I wasn't. Smooth, wealthy, the kind of guy who wore suits to buy groceries. He sold real estate and drove a BMW that probably cost more than I made in 2 years. "Jake, buddy," he called out, flashing that politician's smile. "How's business?" "Can't complain," I replied, wiping my hands on a shop rag. "What brings you by?" "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something. Business opportunity." I raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. Well, this location is prime real estate, right on Main Street, plenty of foot traffic. Have you ever considered selling? Not really. This place has been in my family for 30 years. Trent nodded sympathetically. I understand the sentimental value, but think about the financial opportunity. I could get you top dollar, enough to retire early. You and Riley could travel, see the world. The way he said Riley's name made my skin crawl. Too familiar, too intimate. I'll think about it, I lied. After he left, I called Riley. Hey, honey, Trent Morrison stopped by today. You know him? A pause. Trent? Oh yeah, he's helped some of my friends with real estate stuff. Why? Just wondering. He seems to know you pretty well. I wouldn't say that. We've talked a few times, that's all. Another lie. They were piling up like dirty laundry. That evening, I confronted Mike. We were closing up the shop, and I couldn't take the tension anymore. Mike, what's going on with you lately? He looked up from the engine he was working on, guilt written all over his face. What do you mean? You've been acting weird, avoiding me, leaving early. If something's wrong, just tell me. Mike set down his wrench and sighed heavily. Jake, there's something you need to know about Riley. My heart hammered against my ribs. What about her? I've seen her around town, with Trent Morrison. They've been close. How close? Close enough that people are talking. The betrayal hit me from two directions at once. My wife was cheating, and my best friend had known about it without telling me. How long have you known? A few weeks, maybe a month. I didn't know how to tell you. A month? My voice rose. You've known for a month and said nothing. I thought maybe I was wrong. I hoped I was wrong. But you weren't wrong, were you? Mike shook his head miserably. I'm sorry, Jake. I should have told you sooner. I wanted to hit something, preferably Trent Morrison's smug face. Instead, I grabbed a beer from the shop fridge and tried to think clearly. What exactly did you see? Them together at Murphy's bar, holding hands, kissing, acting like a couple. Murphy's bar. The same place Riley claimed she went for girls' nights with her friend Carly. Speaking of Carly, she showed up at the garage the next day like she'd been summoned. Carly Walsh was Riley's enabler, the kind of friend who would help hide a body and then complain about getting her nails dirty. Jake, how are you, sweetie? She gushed, giving me an air kiss that smelled like cheap perfume and cigarettes. I'm fine, Carly. What brings you by? Oh, I was just in the neighborhood. Thought I'd say hi. Carly had never been in the neighborhood of my garage in the 15 years I'd known her. She lived on the other side of town and drove a car that barely ran. How's Riley doing? I asked, testing the waters. She's great. Really happy lately. Glowing, you know? Glowing. Right. Probably from all the sex she was having with Trent Morrison. That's good to hear. She's been working late a lot lately. Carly's eyes flickered. Has she? I wouldn't know. We haven't talked much recently. Another lie. Riley had claimed just yesterday that she was having dinner with Carly. The web of deception was becoming clearer, and I was apparently the only one who hadn't been invited to join. The breaking point came on a Thursday night that started like any other, and ended with my world turned upside down. I was working late at the garage, trying to finish an engine rebuild for a customer who needed his truck back by morning. The work was therapeutic, giving my hands something to do while my mind processed the growing evidence of my wife's betrayal. Around 10 o'clock, my phone rang. Riley's name flashed on the screen, and I almost didn't answer. Almost. Jake, thank God you picked up. Her voice was shaking, breathless, with what sounded like genuine panic. What's wrong? Someone broke into the garage. The back doors smashed in, and I think they took money from the cash drawer. Are you there now? Are you safe? I'm in the parking lot. I was driving by and saw the door hanging open. I didn't go inside. Stay where you are. I'm coming. I made it to the garage in record time, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and rage. Riley was standing by her car, arms wrapped around herself, looking genuinely shaken. What happened? I demanded, pulling her into my arms despite everything. I don't know. I was driving home from dinner with Carly when I saw the door. It looks like they used a crowbar or something. We went inside together, and the damage was immediately apparent. The back door hung at an odd angle, the frame splintered where someone had forced it open. The cash drawer was pulled out, empty except for a few coins. But something felt wrong about the whole scene. Did you call the police? I called you first. Should I call them now? Yeah, definitely. While Riley made the call, I examined the break-in more carefully. The damage looked fresh, but not quite right. The wood splinters were clean, as if the door had been forced from the inside rather than outside. And why would a thief leave the expensive tools hanging on the wall but take maybe $50 from the cash drawer? Officer Kimball arrived 20 minutes later, a grizzled veteran who'd been patrolling this town since before I could drive. He surveyed the damage with the practiced eye of someone who'd seen it all. Any idea who might have done this? He asked, pulling out a notepad. No clue, I replied. We don't keep much cash here, so it wasn't exactly Fort Knox. What about employees? Anyone with access? Just Mike Hendricks, my partner. But he's been with me for 10 years. I'd trust him with my life. Riley cleared her throat. Actually, Jake, there's something I need to tell you. I turned to her, confused. What? I saw Mike here earlier tonight, around 8:30. I thought it was strange because you'd told me he'd gone home for the day. The words hit me like a physical blow. What are you talking about? I was driving by on my way to meet Carly, and I saw his truck in the parking lot. The lights were on inside. Officer Kimball looked between us with interest. This Mike fellow, does he have keys? Of course he has keys, I said, my voice rising. He works here, but he wouldn't. Jake, Riley interrupted, her voice gentle but firm. I found something. She led us to Mike's workstation, where his red toolbox sat open. Inside, nestled between wrenches and socket sets, was a small jewelry box I'd never seen before. I noticed it when we first came in, Riley explained. It was just sitting there open. Officer Kimball picked up the box with a handkerchief. Looks expensive. You ever see this before? I shook my head, feeling sick. No, never. There's more, Riley said quietly. She opened Mike's locker and pulled out a pair of lacy black underwear. These were stuffed in the back. I stared at the underwear, my mind reeling. They looked like Riley's, but something was off about the size. Those aren't yours, I said to Riley. They are, Jake. I've been missing them for weeks. But I knew Riley's body better than anyone, and those underwear were at least 2 sizes too small. Someone was setting Mike up and doing a sloppy job of it. I think we need to have a conversation with Mr. Hendricks, Officer Kimball said, closing his notepad. This is insane, I protested. Mike wouldn't steal from me. He's my best friend. Best friends have been known to disappoint, Riley said softly, placing a hand on my arm. I'm sorry, honey. I know this is hard. Hard didn't begin to cover it. If Mike was guilty, then I'd lost my business partner, my best friend, and my faith in my own judgment all in one night. If he wasn't guilty, then someone was going to extraordinary lengths to frame him. The next morning, Mike arrived at work to find police cars in the parking lot. I watched through the office window as Officer Kimball approached him, and I saw the exact moment Mike realized what was happening. His face went from confusion to hurt to anger in the span of seconds. Jake! He called out as the officer led him toward the building. What the hell is going on? I met them at the door, unable to look Mike in the eye. Someone broke in last night, stole money from the cash drawer. And you think I did it? The pain in his voice was unmistakable. We found evidence in your workspace, Officer Kimball explained, showing Mike the jewelry box and underwear. Mike's face went white. That's not mine. I've never seen any of that stuff before in my life. That's what they all say, the officer replied dryly. Jake, you know me. You know I wouldn't do this. I wanted to believe him. Everything in my gut told me Mike was telling the truth. But the evidence was right there, and Riley had seen him at the garage when he was supposed to be home. I don't know what to believe anymore, I admitted. The hurt in Mike's eyes was worse than any physical blow. 25 years of friendship. And this is what you think of me? The evidence— Screw the evidence! Mike exploded. You know who I am, Jake, or at least I thought you did. Officer Kimball stepped between us. Let's keep this civil. Mr. Hendricks, I'm going to need you to come to the station for questioning. As they led Mike away, he turned back to me one last time. When you figure out who really did this, I hope you can live with yourself. Riley squeezed my hand as we watched the police car drive away. I'm sorry, baby. I know how much Mike meant to you. Yeah, I said, but something in her tone bothered me. She didn't sound sorry. She sounded satisfied. The rest of the day passed in a blur of phone calls and paperwork. Word of Mike's arrest spread through town like wildfire, and I found myself fielding questions from customers, suppliers, and nosy neighbors. Everyone wanted to know how I'd missed the signs, how my best friend could have betrayed me so completely. By evening, I was exhausted and emotionally drained. Riley suggested we go to Murphy's bar for dinner, claiming I needed to get out of the house and away from the stress. I agreed, hoping alcohol might numb the pain of losing my best friend and business partner. Murphy's was crowded for a Thursday night, filled with the usual mix of blue-collar workers, retirees, and 20-somethings looking for cheap drinks. We found a booth in the back, and Riley ordered us both whiskey. To new beginnings, she said, raising her glass. To figuring out what the hell happened, I countered. As we drank, I noticed Riley checking her phone frequently, smiling at messages she didn't share. When I asked who was texting her, she claimed it was Carly, sending her updates about some drama at work. I need to use the restroom, Riley announced after our second round. She was gone for nearly 15 minutes, long enough for me to start wondering what was taking so long. When she returned, her lipstick was freshly applied and she smelled like men's cologne. Everything okay? I asked. Fine. Just ran into someone I knew. The pieces were falling into place, but I wasn't ready to accept what they revealed. My wife was cheating on me, my best friend was sitting in jail, and I was apparently the biggest fool in town. But as I sat there watching Riley smile at her phone, a new emotion began to replace the hurt and confusion. Anger. Cold, calculating anger that would soon burn everything in its path. The security footage changed everything. I'd forgotten about the cameras until Officer Kimball mentioned them during his follow-up visit Friday morning. 4 digital cameras covered every angle of the garage, recording 24 hours a day to a hard drive in my office. We'll need to review the footage from last night, Kimball explained. Might show us how the perpetrator gained access. Riley, who had been unusually quiet all morning, suddenly became very interested in the conversation. Do you really think that's necessary? I mean, you already have the evidence from Mike's locker. Standard procedure, ma'am. Never hurts to be thorough. I led them to my office, where the security system's monitor sat dark on my desk. As I powered it up, I noticed Riley fidgeting behind me, checking her phone repeatedly. The system records everything to this hard drive, I explained to Kimball. We can go back weeks if we need to. Let's start with yesterday evening, around the time of the break-in. I navigated to Thursday night's footage and hit play. The timestamp showed 8:09 p.m., and the garage appeared empty and secure. We fast-forwarded through the next hour, watching shadows lengthen across the shop floor. At 9:15 p.m., a figure appeared on camera entering through the front door. My heart sank, thinking we were about to watch Mike commit the crime he'd been accused of. But as the figure moved into better lighting, I realized it wasn't Mike at all. It was Riley. What the hell? I muttered, pausing the footage. Riley had gone pale. I can explain. Keep playing it, Officer Kimball instructed, his voice suddenly sharp with interest. We watched in stunned silence as Riley moved purposefully through the garage. She went straight to Mike's workstation, pulled the jewelry box from her purse, and placed it carefully in his toolbox. Then she moved to his locker, opened it with a key she produced from her pocket, and stuffed the black underwear inside, but she wasn't finished. Next, she went to the cash drawer, removed all the bills, and stuffed them in her purse. Finally, she walked to the back door, unlocked it from the inside, and used a crowbar from Mike's tool rack to damage the frame, making it look like a forced entry. The entire performance took less than 10 minutes. "Jesus Christ," I whispered. Officer Kimball stopped the recording and turned to Riley, whose face had gone from pale to ashen. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for filing a false police report, tampering with evidence, and theft." "Wait," Riley protested, her composure finally cracking. "You don't understand. I can explain everything." "Save it for your lawyer," Kimball replied, reaching for his handcuffs. As the officer read Riley her rights, my mind raced to process what I'd just witnessed. My wife had deliberately framed my best friend for a crime she'd committed herself. But why? What possible motive could she have? The answer came in the form of a text message that arrived on Riley's phone while Kimball was cuffing her. The phone was sitting on my desk, and the message preview was clearly visible. Did it work? Is Jake ready to sell? T. Trent Morrison. Of course. I grabbed the phone before Kimball could stop me and scrolled through the message history. Months of planning. Detailed discussions about how to get me to sell the garage. Riley and Trent had orchestrated the entire scheme, from the fake break-in to framing Mike, all designed to pressure me into selling the property so Trent could flip it for a massive profit. "You want to see this," I told Kimball, handing him the phone. As the officer reviewed the messages, Riley finally broke down completely. "Jake, please, let me explain. It wasn't supposed to happen like this." "How was it supposed to happen?" I demanded. "You frame my best friend, destroy my business, and then what? We ride off into the sunset with Trent's money?" "You don't understand the pressure I've been under. Trent said if we could get you to sell, we'd all be rich. We could start over somewhere new." "We? You mean you and Trent could start over? What was I supposed to do, just disappear?" Riley's silence was answer enough. Officer Kimball finished reading the messages and shook his head in disgust. "Mrs. Malloy, you're looking at additional charges of conspiracy and fraud, and we'll need to bring in Mr. Morrison for questioning." As they led Riley away, she turned back to me with tears streaming down her face. "Jake, I'm sorry. I never meant for it to go this far." "No," I replied, my voice cold as winter. "You're sorry you got caught. There's a difference." After they left, I sat alone in my office, surrounded by the wreckage of my life. My marriage was over. My business was in shambles. My best friend was sitting in jail because of my wife's lies. But as I stared at the security monitor, still displaying the frozen image of Riley planting evidence, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: clarity. For the first time since this nightmare began, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I called the police station and demanded to speak with Mike. When they finally put him on the phone, his voice was hoarse with exhaustion and anger. "Jake, what do you want?" "I want to apologize, and I want to tell you that Riley's been arrested." Silence. Then, "What?" I told him everything: the security footage, the text messages, the conspiracy with Trent Morrison. With each detail, I could hear the anger in Mike's voice, shifting from me to Riley and Trent. "That manipulative person," he said finally. "She played us both." "I know, and I'm sorry I doubted you. 25 years of friendship, and I threw it away because of planted evidence and a lying wife." "You were set up just as much as I was," Mike said, his voice softening. "She knew exactly which buttons to push. They're releasing you this afternoon. Charges dropped, record expunged. What about Riley and Trent?" "That's where things get interesting," I said, a plan already forming in my mind. "I think it's time we showed this town exactly who they're dealing with." Mike was quiet for a moment. What did you have in mind? Nothing illegal. Nothing that will get us arrested. But I think Riley and Trent deserve to experience some consequences for their actions. I'm listening. Meet me at the garage when you get out. We have work to do. As I hung up the phone, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Purpose. Riley and Trent had played a game with my life, using lies and manipulation to try to destroy everything I'd built. Now it was my turn to play, and I intended to win. Word traveled fast in a town of 15,000 people. By Saturday morning, everyone knew about Riley's arrest and Mike's exoneration. The story had everything small-town gossip thrived on: adultery, betrayal, false accusations, and a dramatic reversal of fortune. Mrs. Griggs, my 70-year-old neighbor who knew everyone's business better than they knew it themselves, appeared at the garage bright and early with fresh coffee and a hunger for details. "Jake, honey, I just can't believe it," she said, settling her considerable bulk onto a folding chair Mike had brought out for her. "Riley always seemed like such a sweet girl." "Appearances can be deceiving," I replied, accepting the coffee gratefully. "Oh, I always had my suspicions," Mrs. Griggs continued, warming to her favorite subject. "The way she dressed, the hours she kept, always checking her phone and smiling at it like she had a secret." Mike emerged from under the hood of a Chevy Silverado, wiping his hands on a shop rag. "What kind of suspicions?" Mrs. Griggs leaned forward conspiratorially. "Well, I didn't want to say anything at the time, but I saw her at Murphy's bar several times with that Morrison fellow, holding hands, whispering, carrying on like teenagers." "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. "Oh, honey, you never want to be the one to deliver that kind of news. Besides, I thought maybe you knew and were okay with it. Some couples have arrangements these days." The irony wasn't lost on me. Riley had suggested an open marriage just days before her arrest, probably laying the groundwork for when her affair inevitably came to light. "What's the word around town?" Mike asked. Mrs. Griggs's eyes lit up. This was her specialty. "Well, most folks are on your side, Jake. They're saying Riley got what she deserved, and they're glad Mike was cleared. But there are some who think you should have known what was going on in your own marriage." "And what about Trent?" "That's where it gets interesting. His wife Lisa found out about the affair and threw him out of the house. He's staying at the Motel 6 out by the highway, and she's filed for divorce. Apparently, she's taking him for everything he's worth." I felt a grim satisfaction at that news. Trent's life was unraveling just as quickly as mine had, but unlike me, he deserved every bit of misery coming his way. "There's more," Mrs. Griggs continued. "Lisa Morrison came by my house yesterday afternoon asking questions about Riley and Trent. Seems she wants to know exactly how long the affair has been going on." "What did you tell her?" "The truth. That I'd seen them together for months, maybe longer. She took notes, if you can believe that. I think she's building a case for her divorce lawyer." The thought of Lisa Morrison methodically documenting her husband's infidelity for legal purposes made me smile. Trent had destroyed my marriage, but in doing so, he'd also destroyed his own. Around noon, Carly Walsh showed up at the garage, looking nervous and defensive. She'd been Riley's closest friend and biggest enabler, and I suspected she'd known about the affair all along. "Jake, I just wanted to say how sorry I am about everything," she began, but I cut her off. "Save it, Carly. I know you knew about Riley and Trent." Her face flushed red. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Really?" "Because Riley told the police she was having dinner with you Thursday night when she was actually staging the break-in. That makes you either an accomplice or a liar." "I was having dinner with Riley Thursday night," Carly insisted. "We went to that new Italian place on 5th Street. Mike looked up from his work. "The Italian place that's been closed for renovations all week?" Carly's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Maybe it was a different night." "Maybe you should leave," I suggested, my voice hard. "And maybe you should think carefully about what you tell people, because the police are still investigating and lying to them is a crime. After Carly left, Mike shook his head in disgust. How many people were in on this? I'm starting to think the whole damn town knew except for me. That afternoon brought an unexpected visitor, Trent Morrison himself. He pulled up in his BMW, which I noticed had a fresh scratch along the passenger side door. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, and his expensive suit looked like he'd slept in it. "Jake, we need to talk," he said, approaching cautiously. "I don't think we do," I replied, not looking up from the engine I was working on. "Look, I know you're angry, but this whole situation has gotten out of hand. Riley's in jail, my marriage is over, and for what? A stupid business deal?" I set down my wrench and finally looked at him. "You're right. It was stupid. Stupid and cruel and destructive. You destroyed 3 marriages and nearly sent an innocent man to prison, all for money. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Riley said she could convince you to sell without all the drama. So this is Riley's fault now?" Trent ran his hands through his hair. "I'm not saying that. I'm saying we all made mistakes." "No, Trent. You and Riley made choices, deliberate, calculated choices to lie, cheat, and steal. Don't try to minimize that by calling them mistakes." "What do you want from me, Jake? I can't undo what happened." I studied his face, seeing the desperation there. His perfect life was crumbling, and he was looking for someone to blame or someone to save him. He wouldn't find either here. "I want you to stay away from me, my business, and my friends. I want you to leave town and never come back. And I want you to remember that every bad thing happening to you right now is a direct result of your own actions. You can't run me out of town. I have a business here, clients who depend on me." Mike emerged from the shop holding a large wrench in one hand. "I think Jake was pretty clear. You should leave." Trent looked between us, weighing his options. He was outnumbered and outgunned, and he knew it. "This isn't over," he said finally. "Yes, it is," I replied. "You just don't know it yet." As Trent drove away, Mrs. Griggs appeared at my elbow as if by magic. "Was that Trent Morrison? What did he want?" "To make threats he can't back up," I said. "Oh, that man has no idea what he's gotten himself into," she said, with obvious relish. "Lisa Morrison is out for revenge, and she's got the best divorce lawyer in 3 counties. By the time she's done with him, he'll be lucky to keep his underwear." That evening, Mike and I sat on the front porch of my house, drinking beer and watching the sun set over our small town. It had been one of the strangest weeks of my life, but for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. "So what's next?" Mike asked. "We rebuild," I said. "The business, our friendship, my life. All of it." "What about Riley?" I took a long pull of my beer. "Riley made her choice. Now she gets to live with the consequences." "And Trent?" I smiled, and it wasn't entirely pleasant. "Trent's about to learn that actions have consequences, and in a town this small, those consequences have a way of multiplying." As if summoned by our conversation, my phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number, but when I opened it, I recognized the writing style immediately. "Jake, please call me. I can explain everything. This is all a misunderstanding. Riley." I showed the message to Mike, who snorted with laughter. "A misunderstanding? She staged a crime scene and framed me for theft." Should I respond? That's up to you. But if it were me, I'd let her sit in that jail cell and think about what she's done. I deleted the message without responding. Riley had spent months lying to me, manipulating me, and planning my downfall. She could spend a few days wondering what I was thinking. The game was far from over, but for the first time since it began, I was holding all the cards. Riley made bail Monday morning, thanks to her mother driving down from Cleveland with her life savings and a lecture about how I was somehow responsible for her daughter's criminal behavior. By noon, Riley was standing in my driveway, looking like a woman who'd spent 3 days in county lockup. "Jake, please, just give me 5 minutes to explain," she called out as I walked from my truck to the front door. There's nothing to explain, I replied without stopping. I saw the security footage. I read the text messages. I know exactly who you are now. You don't understand the pressure I was under. Trent said if we didn't get you to sell, he'd lose everything. His business, his marriage, his reputation. I turned to face her, amazed by her audacity. So you decided to destroy my business, my marriage, and my best friend's life to save Trent's reputation? How noble of you. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Mike wasn't supposed to get arrested. We thought you'd just assume it was a random break-in and decide to sell rather than deal with the hassle. And when that didn't work, you decided to frame Mike. Riley's composure cracked. I panicked, okay? Trent was putting so much pressure on me, and I didn't know what else to do. You could have told the truth. You could have asked for a divorce like a normal person. You could have acted like a human being instead of a sociopathic con artist. Don't call me that. I'm not a sociopath. I'm a woman who made some bad choices because I was in love. You were in love with Trent's money, not Trent. There's a difference. Mrs. Griggs appeared on her front porch, clearly enjoying the free entertainment. Riley noticed her audience and lowered her voice. Can we please discuss this inside? People are watching. Good, let them watch. Let them see exactly who Riley Malloy really is. Riley's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. You're being cruel, Jake. This isn't like you. You're right. The old Jake would have forgiven you, taken you back, and pretended none of this happened. But the old Jake was a fool who trusted people who didn't deserve it. So what happens now? We just throw away 15 years of marriage? You threw it away the moment you started sleeping with Trent Morrison. I'm just acknowledging reality. That afternoon, I received a visit from Riley's lawyer, a sharp-dressed woman named Patricia Chen, who specialized in divorce cases. She sat across from my kitchen table with a briefcase full of documents and a practiced expression of professional sympathy. Mr. Malloy, I represent your wife in this matter. She's asked me to discuss the terms of your separation. I haven't agreed to any separation. Riley's the one who committed crimes. That's a separate legal matter. Right now, we need to address the division of marital assets. She opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. Mrs. Malloy is entitled to half of all marital property, including the garage, this house, and your joint bank accounts. I laughed out loud. She's entitled to half of the business she tried to destroy? Half of the house she was planning to abandon? That's rich. Regardless of recent events, you were married for 15 years. Michigan is a no-fault divorce state, which means her adultery and criminal behavior don't matter legally. I know. But here's what you might not know. I pulled out my own folder, filled with documents Mike had helped me compile over the weekend. Riley has been systematically stealing money from our joint accounts for months, funneling it into a secret account she opened with Trent Morrison. She's also been forging my signature on business documents, including a loan application for $50,000. Patricia Chen's professional composure slipped slightly. Do you have proof of these allegations? Bank records, signature analysis, testimony from the loan officer who processed the application. Your client isn't just an adulteress, she's an embezzler and a forger. The lawyer reviewed the documents I'd provided, her expression growing more troubled with each page. These are serious accusations, Mr. Malloy. They're not accusations, they're facts. And if Riley wants to play hardball with the divorce, I'm prepared to file criminal charges for every crime she's committed. What are you proposing? Riley gets nothing. She walks away with the clothes on her back and whatever money she hasn't already stolen. In exchange, I don't press additional charges. That's hardly reasonable. Reasonable? I interrupted. Your client framed an innocent man for theft, staged a crime scene, committed perjury, and embezzled marital funds to finance an affair. She's lucky I'm not demanding she pay me back for the legal fees and lost business. Patricia Chen closed her briefcase with a sharp click. I'll need to discuss this with my client. You do that. but tell her the offer expires at the end of the week. After that, I'm taking everything to the district attorney." After the lawyer left, I called Mike to update him on the situation. He was back at work, trying to restore some normalcy to our disrupted business, but I could hear the strain in his voice. "How are you holding up?" I asked. "Better now that everyone knows the truth, but it's going to take time to rebuild my reputation. Some people still look at me funny, like they're wondering if I really did it." "That'll pass. Mrs. Griggs has been working overtime to set the record straight." Mike chuckled. "God bless that woman. She's like a one-person public relations firm." "Speaking of public relations, I think it's time we went on the offensive." "What do you mean?" "I mean, Trent Morrison is still walking around town like he's the victim in all this. Maybe it's time he faced some consequences." "What kind of consequences?" I smiled, remembering the scratch on Trent's BMW. The kind that hurt where he's most vulnerable, his pride and his wallet. That evening, Mike and I drove to the Motel 6 where Trent was staying. His BMW was parked outside room 112, looking sadly out of place among the pickup trucks and economy cars of the motel's usual clientele. "You sure about this?" Mike asked as we sat in my truck, watching the motel. "He destroyed our lives for money. Seems only fair that we return the favor." We waited until after midnight, when the motel was quiet and dark. Then we got to work. The plan was simple, but effective. We didn't damage Trent's car. That would have been vandalism, and we weren't criminals. Instead, we made it clear that his presence in town was no longer welcome. We covered his BMW with bumper stickers, dozens of them, advertising everything from political candidates he despised to embarrassing personal conditions. We filled his gas tank with sugar-free gelatin powder, which wouldn't damage the engine, but would create a spectacular mess when he tried to start the car. And we left a note on his windshield. "Time to find a new town, Romeo." The next morning, Mrs. Griggs called to tell me that Trent had been seen at the car wash, frantically trying to remove bumper stickers while his BMW belched pink foam from the exhaust pipe. The whole scene had been witnessed by at least a dozen people, including Lisa Morrison, who had reportedly laughed so hard she nearly fell down. "That man looked like he wanted to disappear into the ground," Mrs. Griggs reported gleefully. And when Lisa saw him, she took pictures with her phone, said she was going to show them to her divorce lawyer. By Wednesday, the pressure on both Riley and Trent had reached a breaking point. Riley's lawyer called to accept my divorce terms, and Trent Morrison put his house on the market and quietly left town without saying goodbye to anyone. The war was over, but the victory felt hollow. I'd won, but at the cost of everything I'd once held dear. My marriage was finished, my trust in people was shattered, and my small town felt smaller than ever. But as I sat in my garage that evening, listening to Mike humming while he worked on an engine rebuild, I realized that maybe losing everything wasn't the worst thing that could happen to a person. Sometimes you had to tear down the old structure before you could build something better. The question was, what did I want to build? The answer came to me Friday night in the form of a phone call that would change everything. I was at home, nursing a beer and watching a baseball game, when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. "Jake? It's Lisa Morrison." I sat up straighter. "Lisa, how are you holding up?" "Better now that Trent's gone. Listen, I need to talk to you about something important. Can we meet?" "Sure. What's this about?" "I'd rather discuss it in person. Can you meet me at Murphy's bar in an hour?" Murphy's was crowded for a Friday night, but Lisa had secured a quiet booth in the back. She looked different than I remembered, stronger, more confident, like she'd shed a weight she'd been carrying for years. "Thank you for meeting me," she said as I slid into the booth across from her. "What's on your mind?" Lisa pulled out a manila folder and set it on the table between us. "I've been going through Trent's business records for the divorce proceedings. What I found might interest you." She opened the folder and showed me a stack of documents: contracts, bank statements, property deeds. Did you know that Trent had already lined up buyers for your garage property? What do you mean? He had a deal in place with a chain restaurant that wanted to build on your corner. The sale was contingent on him acquiring your property within 6 months. If he'd succeeded in forcing you to sell, he would have made over $200,000 in profit. The scope of the betrayal hit me like a physical blow. This hadn't been a simple affair or a spur-of-the-moment scheme. Trent and Riley had been planning to destroy my life for months, all for money. There's more, Lisa continued. Trent took out a loan against our house to finance the restaurant deal. When the deal fell through because you wouldn't sell, we lost everything. The bank foreclosed last week. I'm sorry, Lisa. I know this isn't your fault. That's not why I'm telling you this. I'm telling you because Trent isn't done. He called me yesterday from wherever he's hiding. He's furious about losing the deal, and he blames you for ruining his life. What did he say? He said he was going to make you pay for what you cost him. He was drunk and ranting, but he sounded dangerous, Jake. I think you need to be careful. I thanked Lisa for the warning and drove home with my mind racing. Trent Morrison had already destroyed my marriage and nearly destroyed my best friend's life. If he was planning some kind of revenge, I needed to be ready. The next morning brought the answer to my questions in the worst possible way. I arrived at the garage to find the front windows smashed and graffiti spray-painted across the walls. Someone had broken in during the night and trashed the place. Tools scattered, equipment damaged, oil and coolant spilled across the floor. But this wasn't random vandalism. This was personal. The graffiti spelled out cheater and liar in red paint, and someone had left a note on my desk. You destroyed my life. Now I'm going to destroy yours. T. Mike arrived 20 minutes later and surveyed the damage with grim determination. How much do you think this will cost to fix? Thousands. Maybe tens of thousands if the equipment is damaged beyond repair. Insurance will cover it, right? I shook my head. Not if they determine it was done by someone with a personal grudge. They'll call it a domestic dispute and deny the claim. Mike picked up a wrench that had been bent nearly in half. That son of a jerk. He's not content with destroying your marriage. Now he wants to destroy your livelihood too. As we began cleaning up the mess, I felt something I hadn't experienced since this whole nightmare began. Pure, focused rage. Trent Morrison had taken everything from me. My wife, my trust, my peace of mind, and now my business. But he'd made one crucial mistake. He'd come back. I called Officer Kimball to report the break-in, and he arrived with his partner to document the scene. The investigation was thorough but ultimately futile. No fingerprints, no witnesses, no evidence beyond the obvious fact that Trent Morrison had been here. We can't prove he did this, Kimball explained. The note isn't signed and anyone could have written it. But you know he did it. Knowing and proving are two different things, unless you have security footage. I stopped him mid-sentence. Actually, I do. The new security system I'd installed after Riley's staged break-in had captured everything in high definition. We watched on the monitor as Trent's BMW pulled up to the garage at 2:30 a.m. Trent got out, looked directly into the camera, and smiled before pulling on a ski mask. For the next hour, we watched him systematically destroy my business. He smashed windows, spray-painted walls, and damaged thousands of dollars worth of equipment. But the most telling moment came at the end, when he removed his mask and looked directly into the camera again. "Enjoy your evidence, Jake," he said, his voice clear on the audio recording. "I'm just getting started." Officer Kimball shook his head in amazement. I've never seen anyone incriminate themselves so thoroughly. It's like he wanted to be caught. Maybe he did, I said, a plan forming in my mind. Maybe he's so desperate for revenge that he doesn't care about the consequences. We'll put out a warrant for his arrest. He can't have gone far. But Trent Morrison was smarter than I'd given him credit for. When police went to arrest him, they discovered he'd already left town again, this time leaving no forwarding address. The warrant would follow him wherever he went, but for now, he was in the wind. That afternoon, as Mike and I continued cleaning up the damage, I received a call that changed everything. "Jake, it's Riley. I need to see you. It's about Trent." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at the diner on the outskirts of town. She was waiting in a corner booth, looking haggard and desperate. The confident woman who'd once manipulated me so easily was gone, replaced by someone who looked broken and afraid. "Thank you for coming," she said as I sat down. "What do you want, Riley?" "Trent called me this morning. He's lost his mind, Jake. He's talking about burning down the garage, hurting you, maybe worse." "Where is he?" "I don't know. He wouldn't tell me. But he's not done with you. He blames you for everything, losing his wife, his house, his business. He said if he can't have his life back, he's going to make sure you don't have yours." I studied her face, looking for signs of deception. "Why are you telling me this? What's in it for you?" "Nothing. I'm telling you because despite everything that's happened, I don't want to see you hurt, and because I know this is partly my fault." "Partly?" Riley's voice broke. "It's mostly my fault. I know that now. I destroyed our marriage, I nearly destroyed Mike's life, and I helped create the monster that Trent's become. I can't undo any of that, but maybe I can prevent him from hurting you." For the first time since this nightmare began, Riley seemed genuinely remorseful. But it was too little, too late. "What do you want me to do with this information?" "Be careful. Watch your back. And maybe consider leaving town for a while until the police catch him." "I'm not running from Trent Morrison." "Then what are you going to do?" I looked out the window at the small town I'd called home for 40 years. Everything had changed, but this was still my home, my business, my life. Trent Morrison had taken enough from me. He wouldn't take this too. "I'm going to end this," I said finally. "One way or another, I'm going to end it." Riley reached across the table and touched my hand. "Jake, please don't do anything stupid. Don't let him turn you into someone you're not." I pulled my hand away. "He already did that, Riley. The question now is whether I can live with who I've become." As I left the diner, I knew exactly what I had to do. Trent Morrison wanted a war, and I was going to give him one. But this time, I would be the one setting the terms. The final battle was about to begin. The trap was elegant in its simplicity. If Trent Morrison wanted to destroy my life, he'd have to come back to finish the job. And when he did, I'd be waiting. Mike and I spent Sunday preparing the garage for Trent's inevitable return. We installed additional security cameras, motion sensors, and silent alarms connected directly to the police station. More importantly, we set up a live streaming system that would broadcast everything to social media in real time. "You sure about this?" Mike asked as we tested the equipment. "He's not going to stop until one of us is destroyed. I'd rather it be him." "And if he doesn't show up?" "He'll show up. His ego won't let him walk away. He needs to win, and right now, he's losing." I was right. Monday night at 11:47 p.m., the motion sensors detected movement outside the garage. I was waiting in my office, watching the security monitors, when Trent's BMW pulled into the parking lot. This time, he wasn't alone. 2 other men got out of the car with him, rough-looking guys I didn't recognize, probably hired muscle from out of town. Trent had come prepared for war. I activated the live stream and called Officer Kimball's personal number. "He's here. 3 of them, and they look like they mean business. We're on our way. Stay hidden and don't do anything stupid." But staying hidden wasn't part of my plan. I wanted Trent to know I was there, waiting for him. I wanted him to understand that this time, he was walking into my trap. I stepped out of the office as the 3 men entered through the damaged front door. Trent saw me immediately and smiled with genuine pleasure. "Jake Malloy, I was hoping you'd be here." "Trent, I see you brought friends. Insurance policy. I learned not to underestimate you." The two hired thugs spread out, flanking me while Trent moved closer. I could see the madness in his eyes now, the desperate fury of a man who'd lost everything and had nothing left to lose. "You destroyed my life," he said, his voice eerily calm. "My marriage, my business, my reputation. All because you wouldn't sell a stupid garage." "I didn't destroy anything, Trent. You did that yourself when you decided to sleep with my wife and frame my best friend. That was business. This is personal." One of the thugs pulled out a crowbar, and I realized they weren't here just to vandalize the place. They were here to hurt me, maybe worse. But I wasn't the same man who'd been blindsided by his wife's betrayal. I'd learned from my mistakes, and I'd prepared for this moment. "Before you do anything you'll regret," I said, pointing to the security cameras. "You should know that everything happening here is being broadcast live on the internet. Thousands of people are watching right now." Trent's eyes followed my gesture to the cameras, and for the first time, uncertainty flickered across his face. "You're bluffing." I pulled out my phone and showed him the live stream. The viewer count was climbing rapidly as word spread through social media. Mrs. Griggs had apparently shared the link with her entire contact list, and the story was going viral. 3,000 viewers and counting, I said, all watching Trent Morrison and his hired thugs threaten an innocent business owner. The two thugs looked at each other nervously. This wasn't what they'd signed up for. "Turn it off," Trent demanded. "Can't do that, it's automated. But here's what I can do. I can give you one chance to walk away. Leave town, never come back, and maybe you won't spend the next 10 years in prison." Trent's face twisted with rage. "You think you're so smart, don't you? You think you've won?" "I know I've won. The question is whether you're smart enough to realize it." That's when Trent snapped. He grabbed the crowbar from one of his thugs and swung it at my head. I ducked, and the crowbar smashed into the wall behind me, leaving a deep gouge in the drywall. The live stream exploded with comments as viewers watched Trent Morrison attempt to assault me with a weapon. The viewer count hit 5,000 and kept climbing. "You want to play games?" Trent screamed, swinging the crowbar again. "Let's play games." This time I was ready. I grabbed a wrench from my workbench and blocked his swing, the impact sending shockwaves up my arm. We circled each other like gladiators, while his hired thugs backed away, clearly wanting no part of what was happening. 10,000 viewers now, I said, breathing hard. "Your attempted murder is going viral, Trent. How's that for business?" The sound of sirens in the distance made everyone freeze. The police were almost here, and Trent's window of opportunity was closing fast. "This isn't over," he snarled, dropping the crowbar. "Yes, it is," I replied. "It's been over since the moment you walked through that door." Officer Kimball burst through the entrance with 3 other officers, weapons drawn. The 2 thugs immediately surrendered, hands in the air, but Trent made one last desperate play. He lunged for me with a knife he'd pulled from his jacket, but I was ready for that too. I sidestepped his attack and brought my wrench down on his wrist, sending the knife clattering across the floor. Trent fell to his knees, clutching his broken wrist and screaming in pain and rage. The live stream had captured everything: the threats, the weapons, the attempted assault, and his final defeat. "Trent Morrison, you're under arrest for breaking and entering, destruction of property, assault with a weapon, and conspiracy," Officer Kimball announced, cuffing him while he writhed on the floor. As they led Trent and his accomplices away, I looked at the live stream on my phone. 15,000 viewers had watched justice being served in real time. The comments were overwhelmingly supportive, with people from around the world expressing their satisfaction at seeing the villain get his comeuppance. Mike arrived just as the police cars were pulling away, having watched the entire confrontation from his house on the live stream. "Jesus, Jake, are you okay?" "I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. I'm free." Free from what? From being afraid. From being a victim. From letting other people control my life. We stood together in the damaged garage, surrounded by the wreckage of my old life. But for the first time in months, I felt hopeful about the future. The next morning, the story had exploded across social media and local news. The video of Trent's arrest had been viewed over 100,000 times, and reporters were calling for interviews. I declined most of them, but I did agree to speak with the local newspaper. "What's next for you, Mr. Malloy?" the reporter asked. "I'm going to rebuild," I said. "The garage, my life, my faith in people. It won't be easy, but nothing worthwhile ever is." "Do you have any regrets about how this all played out?" I thought about Riley, sitting in a jail cell awaiting trial. I thought about Trent, facing decades in prison for his crimes. I thought about the marriage that had died and the innocence I'd lost. "I regret that it came to this," I said finally. "But I don't regret fighting back. Sometimes you have to stand up for yourself even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." 6 months later, Trent Morrison was sentenced to 15 years in prison for his crimes. Riley pleaded guilty to conspiracy and fraud charges and received 3 years probation. She moved back to Cleveland to live with her mother, and I never saw her again. The garage was rebuilt better than before, with state-of-the-art equipment and a security system that would make Fort Knox jealous. Mike and I expanded the business, hiring 2 new mechanics and opening a second location across town. I never remarried, but I learned to be happy alone. Mrs. Griggs became my unofficial social director, introducing me to every single woman in a 50-mile radius. I dated a few of them, but I was in no hurry to trust my heart to someone else. The live stream video became a minor internet sensation, spawning memes and inspiring other people to stand up to bullies and cheaters. I received hundreds of messages from people around the world who said my story had given them courage to fight their own battles. But the best part of the whole experience was rediscovering who I really was underneath all the hurt and betrayal. I wasn't a victim or a fool or a pushover. I was a man who'd been tested by fire and emerged stronger than before. On a warm evening in late spring, I sat on my front porch with a beer and watched the sun set over the town I'd fought so hard to keep. Mrs. Griggs waved from her yard, probably plotting to introduce me to her niece's friend's daughter. Mike's truck was in my driveway. He'd be staying for dinner and probably falling asleep on my couch while watching baseball. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number, and for a moment, my heart raced with the old fear. But when I opened it, I found a message from a stranger who'd seen the video. "Thank you for showing us how to fight back. You're an inspiration." I smiled and deleted the message. I didn't need to be anyone's inspiration. I just needed to be myself, flawed, scarred, but unbroken. The war was over, and I had won. Not because I'd destroyed my enemies, but because I'd refused to let them destroy me. In the end, that was enough.